it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're focusing in on the experience of feeling indebted to your abusers, the narcissist or psychopath, feeling indebted to them, feeling obligated, staying stuck in that role of being validated by them or validating them. It can become a real rut. It can become a real block. It can be real limiting to stay stuck in that relationship. And I want you to really think about how really that is what we call a trauma bond, which keeps you stuck versus liberated and just living your life. And I want you to ask yourself this question. I'm no longer indebted to my abusers, so now I'm going to fulfill my needs by, and then fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks. I'm no longer indebted to my abusers, so I'm now going to fulfill my needs by ... I'm no longer afraid of my abusers coming at me, so now I'm going to fulfill my happiness by enlist at least 10 to 20 things. What are 10 to 20 things that you can do to fulfill your life, your happiness, your inner talents, your inner desires, once you release the fear? Once you release the obligation, once you release the guilt of being manipulated and being caught up in that trauma bond. Because if you have encountered a trauma bond in your life, you feel a sense of obligation or bondedness to this individual, to constantly be put into that role, or what I call basically, it's a familiar place. It's a familiar way of relating. Your body goes back into that original trauma bond, whether it was created earlier in life or whether it was created later in life. You tend to go back, and when you plug back into that trauma bond, the same emotions just start to come into place. It's like a routine. It's like a rut. It's like a habit. It's like someone who reaches for the cigarettes or reaches for the bottle. People who are addicted, you become addicted in essence to this familiated pattern of being in an abuser relationship where someone had violated you, sexually abused you, emotionally abused you through the things they said, the things that they threw, the things that they slammed. It becomes basically habituated in your life, so you have like a habit of emotionally responding. So it's important to let those go. And letting it go is just meaning I'm no longer, my identity is no longer connected to this bond. My identity is no longer connected to this bond. So it's just like when in alcoholic, I really truly feel for someone to truly get over alcoholism, they have to create an identity that is no longer attached to that alcoholic. So a lot of people have an identity of being an alcoholic. I'm a bad boy. I'm a bad girl. I'm a drinker. I'm a this. They tend to have an identity caught up with being an alcoholic. They don't ever see themselves, not ever, always, they see themselves always hanging around a bar or a nightclub or drinkers, or that's where they always see themselves. They then have an identity, or as a smoker or a drug abuser. I'm a this, I'm a that. And what comes to mind is there was an English comedian, was it Russell, what's his last name? Russell. Kind of wavy black hair. He used to be a heroin addict. And I'm going to have to look up his name. But, he used to be a heroin addict. And he really kicked the habit. And it's very difficult for drug abusers to get beyond that. And not only do you have to come clean, you have to kind of own up to that reality. But you have to go through a change of identity. And maybe some of you who are watching here can plug in the names. But, he's a comedian and he's an actor now. He was married for a short time to Katy Perry. But, you really have to get out of the identity of the victim. And so I really think it's almost like an identity shift, a change of identity, which means your belief of yourself, how you verbalize to yourself. And that's such an important part. But, your identity oftentimes is caught up in being this role. It's kind of like you've been trained to be this person. It's kind of like if you've been a secretary all your life. You've been trained to be a secretary. And then now when you try to go for a different position, you're like, I don't have a lot of experience. Like, well, you have to start entry level. You have to start somewhere. So you have to start like entry level into your new non-identity or your new non-victim identity and start kind of like at entry level. I'm no longer a victim. I am a victor. I am conquering this. And now looking at the new emotions, behaviors, thought patterns, activities, and experiences that can now fill that up and give you the experience and the resume of being a non-victim. So what is going to go on the resume of the non-victim? That is for you to decide. What is the non-victim going to do? Is the non-victim going to read? Is the non-victim going to travel? Is the non-victim going to cook? What is the non-victim going to do? If you can list, 10 to 20 things that now that you're no longer a victim, you can see yourself doing, wanting, becoming, and having, what are some of those things that you can now do, be, have, and become, and feel now that you're no longer a victim? Can you fill the pages? Can you fill 2 pages? Can you fill 3? Can you fill 4? Chances are there are things you want to do, be, have, and experience and become in your life that are beyond really what being a victim is about. And even if it's just a little inch in the right direction, it's, if it's feeling safer, that can be a great first step. Now that I'm no longer a victim, I'm feeling safe and I'm feeling at home. I have quiet time. I have peaceful time. I have soft music. I now have a pet in my life. I now have a friend in my life. I now have a real friend in my life. I now own up to the fact that this person has done this and I'm now free. I'm now giving myself permission base to be free of that. And so it really takes an identity shift to go from being a victim to not being a victim. And the opposite of that is being a victor and conquering it. Once you've exposed this will help you get the certainty together that you're doing the right thing. And leave all the uncertainty, the doubt, the criticism, the fear, the paranoia, the suspicion, leave that with that abuser because that's their life. It's not your life. And you don't want to plug into that energy. You don't want to re-engage that energy. You want to separate yourself by very clear and defined boundaries. And the boundaries are very clear. So part of your boundary development is enforcing them, is being very clear. I no longer tolerate this and this behavior. I no longer tolerate these and these looks. I now have, my standards are here rather than being down here. So this is what I require. This is what I demand. This is what I deserve. And this is now what I'm going to receive. So once you make those affirmation statements, you now create your boundaries, which cannot be violated. And if someone does, you say, no, thank you. That treatment doesn't fly with me anymore. That treatment does not work. That treatment is no longer acceptable. I am sorry. It's being able to stand your ground and enforce your boundaries in a very sort of matter-of-fact, objective, very neutral, not combative, not to the point where you're, yelling and losing it to this person. Because remember, argue with a fool and then there are 2. So if you argue with, especially the narcissist and psychopath, the psychopath particularly, they love a good fight. They love to fight. They love to victimize. This keeps them away from their boredom. And if you've spent enough of your life fighting and being combative and trying to defend and justify yourself for even living, let it go. My ladder is no longer up on that tree. I no longer engage in your fighting. I'm sorry. Your viewpoint is not significant. I'm sorry. That viewpoint is not important to me. I'm sorry. That reaction, you need to be able to really be very declarative and know how and intellectually combine your mind and your heart so that you're stating in a very affirmative, non-judgmental way, that what this treatment is no longer going to be effective or it's no longer tolerated. And so you need to be declarative. You need to come and you need to visualize yourself saying this, and you need to practice yourself saying this, rehearsing, and you need to visualize and have your sense of certainty about you. And it's very, very clear cut that this is no longer to be tolerated. I'm sorry. That opinion, that judgment is yours. You've got your opinion. And furthermore, your opinion is none of my business. Your opinion is none of my business. I mean, because people will have whatever sort of critical, criticisms. They'll have their critics, but you know what? That's none of my business right now. It's not what I'm after. I'm not after your opinion. And so just, let it go. I mean, because that's how they're going to ensnare you. Remember, the deception is meant to ensnare. It's basically meant to entangle you and get you caught up. That's what deception is. It's to ensnare. It's to take your perspective away. That's what deception is. Call it out. Call it out, own it, and have faith in yourself, back it up, and really live in that space. And just give your body a chance to be, do, and have from that space. And believe me, I think a very astute viewer said, life will begin to support you with your changes, and you'll begin to see all that positive come rushing in once you create the space for that positivity versus giving credence and value to that negativity. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.